This is the MHS Pawdcast, the online radio voice of Metuchen High School.
Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome to another edition of the Metuchen High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS. I'm Eddie Kalegi. A busy show to get to today. And for the first time in a couple months, I'm sure excited. We're going to be talking sports. We'll first be joined by the track coaches, Marty and Kelli Holleran, to get you set for the upcoming winter track season. This Monday, February 1st, runners will be returning to the track for at least preparation for hopefully some competitions down the line. But it's exciting to see runners back for track for the first time in almost 11 months. Then Josh Hyman and I will get you set for everything else going on in the world of winter sports for all of Metuchen's other teams as MHS athletics ramp up in the month of February after dormant Decembers in January. And then finally, we'll be joined by two of the leaders of Project Graduation, Ms. Coleman and Ms. Piovoso, to talk about what some of the events that have happened so far were, how successful they were, and with 21 weeks remaining for the class of 2021, what else we can expect down the line for the last 5 months for the seniors. But before all that, here are the announcements from Julia Hirschfield.
Thank you, Eddie. For parents of all incoming freshmen, Metuchen High School will be hosting their freshman orientation on Monday night, February 1st at 7 p.m. More information can be found on the school website. Also, Superintendent Vincent Caputo has announced that COVID-19 testing will be available for free at Metuchen High School each week. Students, staff, and now even parents can be tested on Thursdays between 3:30 and 6:30, and Saturdays between 9:30 and 12:30. You must register in advance and complete a virtual telemedicine visit prior to test day, and arrive with a printed copy of your test script. Results will be available within 1 to 3 days. That's all for announcements. Back to you, Eddie.
Thank you, Julia. Now let's move into me and Itai Geller's interview with the Hollerans to preview the upcoming winter track season. After the start of the season was delayed, Metuchen track will be finally resuming activities this coming Monday, February 1st, in preparation for the unconventional winter season. To discuss, we're going to be joined by both coaches. First, we'll be joined by the boys cross country and track coach and MHS biology teacher, Mr. Holleran. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Eddie. Anytime.
So first question, of course, before we discuss track, I just want to ask, how have you and your family been doing through this pandemic, and how have you just adapted life during this crazy year?
It's as for everybody, it's been pretty tough. Family's doing just fine, but the situation is tough. I know it's tough for kids. It's tough for everybody, but I think everybody's making the best of it. So hopefully we'll be out of this soon enough.
So focusing on the upcoming track season, what specific aspects of it will be different compared to the previous winter seasons?
Okay, that's a good question, actually. The norm is that we just, most of the kids on the team are 24/7, 365. That has, been completely changed, going all the way back to March, where, we had no contact with them outside of a virtual situation. So it's been a little bit more difficult for them in terms of training. It's one thing to train on your own, it's another thing to be with your team. And this is the longest stretch I've ever had in 38 years where I didn't see on a daily basis, the athletes that I was coaching. So it's really, a lot of it's been left in, on their laps. Thankfully, we have very motivated and dedicated kids who have been staying with it. But it's been different, and the lack of competition, the lack of training together is a little worrisome for me in terms of the sport overall, not just Metuchen, but the sport in general. And I think it will play a role for a number of years. I think this is not going to go away right away. The development of young kids has really been abrupted, and even to get young kids involved has been more difficult because the school is not in session. And our sport is where we go and grab them. Kids don't walk into Metuchen High School wanting to be runners. You got to go get them. Like I've tried to get Eddie for the last 4 years. But that aspect is almost gone right now. The school's a ghost town. So I think it will be tough for the sport overall. I'm happy that our older kids are going to get their opportunity to finally get back to training together, and then eventually racing. But that won't happen for a while. Our sport does require putting in a lot of work before you can show it, and so we're going to have to get back to work, and we're excited about that. Next Monday is the first day we can meet as a group, and I'm looking at it as a both winter and spring beginning. Most of our kids are doing both anyway, and so now I'm going to take a positive aspect of this week. We're starting spring track on February 1st instead of March 1st. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Well, and you mentioned the commitment that really goes into track, and it's difficult to really keep that commitment going without having competitions or meets and just not seeing the kids for months. But you did have a cross-country season just like any other fall sport. It was abbreviated, but maybe you could describe how that season went for the boys and how it kind of built things up heading into this winter season, despite the long.
Yeah, we were lucky to get that season in, I think, and even that was affected in terms of training, but we were able to have it, and we were able to have some invitational meets, which our sport kind of thrives on. The dual meet aspect of our sport is minimal. It's more of a championship level, and we were able to get that with some meets that we were able to hold at Thompson Park on Saturdays, and then we were able to have a true state sectional where we had everybody in Central Jersey to meet. So that was, I think, cross country of almost all the sports in the fall came out pretty unscathed, where we didn't lose many teams because of COVID. We were never shut down, and we were probably pretty lucky about, for that to happen. But again, our sport is all about social distancing, getting away from the next runner. So it's kind of built into our sport. So yeah, we were lucky, and I was very pleased with what we were able to do. Our guys had a very good season, and it was good to see them. It's been rough not seeing them, honestly, since then, middle of November till now. So it's been a long haul. So
who will become some of the key leaders for the boys this winter? And also, do you think there's some added motivation for yourself and your athletes after missing out on spring track last year?
Yes, I think that it's a great question, Itai. Good work. Yeah, those kids missing out on spring track was devastating for the seniors, but also for our juniors and our underclassmen. We have a lot of very good kids coming back, and Matt Brown for one, Arvin Minavani another one, Ramir Anan, Thomas Kwok. Those are all very good seniors who proved themselves pretty strongly in the winter last year. And then we have underclassmen. We have Tunesh Gupta, we have Josh Byrne, a sophomore, Brandon Sinclair, who was the number 5 freshman in the United States last winter in the 800. So we have a lot of kids coming back with a lot of ability. But again, it's going to take a while for us to get to the point of competing. We have to get together. They have to start training. They have to start getting all that in before we can ever even attempt to be where we were. It's going to take some time, and knowing that will help us, I think. But I'm excited about it. I know they are as well, from what I've talked to them about.
Yeah, obviously there's still some steps to take until we can get back to meets. And I'd argue that winter track, compared to any other sport in the winter season, is the one that would be most changed, because winter track, thinking about Ocean Breeze or the Toms River Bubble, there's always several schools there, and you just can't do that right now. But my last question kind of goes back to what you were alluding to about the layoff for a couple months between this cross-country season and this winter track season. And you mentioned how it's going to be important for training to occur before you guys can get to the point where you can be ready to compete. But how have you been trying to stay in communication with your runners during this period? Because it's been since, early to mid-November since cross-country ended, for the guys to try to stay ready and as prepared as possible for this winter season.
Yeah. So we've kind of had to go back to what we did in March, where we would use Google Classroom, put up workouts that they could kind of follow along the way. The Remind, my phone for text messages, which is probably the number one thing, kids back and forth, letting me know what they're doing. So we've used every avenue we could to be in touch, Zoom meetings. So we've kind of, almost exhausted all of those at this point, though. And we need to get back to actually being together. Training on your own is a lot different than training with teammates, and just the responsibility of being there. And so, we've been able to do it. I think we'll be okay, but I do think we've missed something by not being together, but that's all going to change on Monday. So we're looking forward to that change.
Well,
To get
certainly
things back to where they can be.
Yeah, well, certainly a lot of hard work ahead, but February 1st, this Monday, it's the first step towards coming back towards some semblance of normality. So, Coach Holleran, best of luck heading into the winter season. We'll now be joined by Mrs. Holleran to get her take on the upcoming girls' season.
Entering the season, we knew we had 6 girls who could run, and we're going to be a big part of what we could do. We had a couple of injuries throughout the season, which really affected the outcome of our success of the season. But overall, we were really happy with how the season went. We were put into the red division in cross country this year, so we were competing in that divisional meet. We were against Old Bridge and East Brunswick, and the Group 4 schools in our conference, and we were able to win that, which we were very pleased with, and I was very proud of our girls for that. They were able to accomplish that, dealing with 2 major injuries, not major injuries, but 2 major role players were dealing with some minor injuries that really affected their training. So, and then we ended up second in the sectionals to a very good Rumson Fairhaven team. And really proud of what we were able to accomplish, and without things going 100%. So that was good. And again, just really fortunate that we got that opportunity to compete after losing the spring. It was very disappointing, and it was really important that they were able to get some competition in, or, when you keep training and training and training, but there's nothing to do with that. Kids do lose motivation, and you could lose kids. So we were really lucky to get that season in for those reasons as well. So that's cross country. Looking forward to winter. It's going to be a modified season. I'm not sure we'll be able to have any indoor meets at all. The New York Armory has already closed. They're not going to hold meets. Tom's River, there's supposed to be some kind of meets in Tom's River, but we're not sure how that's going to go, or if we would even be going to those. So most likely the winter season's going to be, like Mr. Holleran said, getting ready for spring, using it in large part to get ourselves in shape for racing back in the spring, later in the spring. And we'll do some interesting things with time trials, and if we can hold small meets with other schools, we'll do that, but they'll most likely be outside. But it's going to be a big transition to coming back every day to training together. We have some really committed girls in our program who I know have been training, but it is very different being back with your teammates and with your coaches on a daily basis. So there's a lot to look forward to, and we are.
Yeah, certainly. And you mentioned how successful the cross-country season was. I believe it was 4 girls were nominated for all conference honors, so really strong performance there. But I'm going to ask you the same question I asked your husband about communication with the girls during this layoff. I mean, you had it back in the spring when there was no spring season and it was difficult, but now another gap, 2.5 months since cross-country ended before this exciting day on Monday when you can get back to training. But how have you been able to adapt and stay in contact with the girls throughout the winter and try to get them to stay in some sort of prepared shape for this upcoming season?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's been at times challenging because we were actually limited by the NJSIAA in terms of how much we can have contact with our athletes. So we really had to kind of plan it out and just kind of give suggestions for workouts in like maybe a week's worth of time. And it comes down to even more so than communication, but trust on our part that the athletes are going to get it done. We can suggest all that we want, but the fact that we weren't allowed to be with them really it comes down to trust, and it comes down to their desire to improve. So I think that we have kids who we can trust and who do want to improve and who were staying motivated to get those workouts done. But but the communication part, it's a big challenge because we really weren't allowed to communicate with them for a while. And then started January 11th where we could, but up until that, we really weren't supposed to be. And so it was very limited and just really suggestions of what they could do. And then it's just been a lot of texting, some Zoom meetings, some Google Classroom communication, mainly texting, lots of texting. So we're looking forward to Sarah Lignell had a winter. She's a junior. She had a really strong winter season last year. So we're looking for more to come from her. She's a distance runner. Lucy Lee was the winter sectional champion in the pole vault. So we're looking forward to seeing what she can do in the pole vault, and along with Paige Larson in the pole vault and sprints. We have Caroline Schleif joining us for winter track for the first time. So we think that's going to be a good addition to our program and help her in the spring by having a little bit longer training in front and behind her. Same with Zoe Brown, a sophomore who's joining us for winter track for the first time, coming out of cross country. And she's so young, she didn't have a spring last year, but I know she's excited to get on the track and do some work on the track. Neila Matthews is a sophomore who had a really strong winter last year. And we are looking forward to what she can accomplish this year as well. So I'd say those are the main names so far, and hopefully we have some newcomers and we go from there.
So a lot of promising athletes in all four grades for both the boys and the girls. Coach Holleran, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck heading into next Monday.
Thanks for covering us. Thank you.
All right, so when we come back, we'll be talking sports and project graduation. For Itai Geller, I'm Marty Kelli. This is the Metuchen High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS.
Having trouble seeing the board in class? Do you need safety glasses for your school sport? If you answered yes to either of these questions, head over to Optique Unique, the eyeglass store at 406 Main Street in Metuchen. Optique Unique does it all. Not only do they offer eyewear for all ages, they also sell sports-specific safety glasses for kids and adults. Call them at 732-321-2020. That's 732-321-2020, or visit OptiqueUnique.com. Do you want to build character, build confidence, or even build yourself? All that and more can be accomplished at the Black Belt Institute at 23 New Street, right here in Metuchen. Students of all ages have been able to learn respect, discipline, fitness, and self-defense from their experienced instructors for over 20 years. Whether you're an adult looking for stress reduction or know someone young who has interest in Taekwondo, the Black Belt Institute is the place to go. The Institute takes a fun approach at teaching the rules of self-defense, instilling in their students an I-can-do-it attitude. Interested in taking a class? Call them at 732-205-9797 or visit their website at blackbeltinst.com. Once again, that's 732-205-9797 or blackbeltinst.com. The Black Belt Institute, Metuchen's leader in martial arts and fitness.
Welcome back to the MHS Podcast, the online radio voice of Metuchen High School. I'm Josh Hyman.
And I'm Marty Kelli.
Well, it's been almost 2 months since sports were in action at MHS, but the winter season is upon us. Let's start with the boys basketball team. A bit of an underwhelming 8-18 2020 season, but this team does have its most seniors since 2017. What are their expectations like heading into this year?
Well, Coach Guy Jensen actually told me the other day that his expectations are high. It's going to be a weird season. It's starting off January 27th, going till March 6th, only 12 games. They're all divisional opponents, and then they'll have a seeding committee for boys and girls basketball that will then group the teams into these 4-team pods that will have their own mini championships, kind of like the Last Dance baseball tournament that we saw back in the summer, a similar style. So that's that's what this unconventional basketball season has come to in the GMC. But Coach Guy Jensen, regardless, is very optimistic. He told me, quote, "This may very well be the most talented team since the 2006 GMC finalists, which are very well known in Metuchen." Junior Dominic Schiappa, who was their scoring leader, 14.1 points per game last season. Senior forwards, Jai Dreher, who had 9 rebounds a game. Luke Schleck, who was second in scoring. They're going to be key, but it's about sharing the ball. Jensen told me that the most important thing for them is to not be selfish, because they have the talent that they can make use of what they have out there. They have, like we said, they have a bunch of seniors, but they also have a lot of talented young players, and this team is really trying to respond from last year. Last year was their worst season since 2015, but think about juniors, Aiden Ahmed, Sam Kagwima, and sophomore Max Cohen. All 3 of them, in addition to senior Logan Grice, Sean Kenny, and the 3 aforementioned key leaders for this team. That's a pretty nice team stacked up. Also, senior Michael Piovoso. It's a deep team. They have to make use of that and share the ball. But I think the boys basketball team is in good position for some success this winter.
Yeah, it definitely does seem like they're in good shape. One thing you notice about this team is the height. You have a lot of really tall players out there: Jai Dreher, Dom Schiappa, Sam Kagwima. And, it's really good to have that leadership with those strong seniors that are going to be, leading these underclassmen into hopefully a really strong winning season here. And as for the girls, they had an impressive 2020 campaign, going 15-11, having 3 winning streaks of 4 games or more. However, their leading rebounder, Sam Anton, graduated. How can the girls adapt for her absence, and who will lead the way?
So not having Anton's going to be a major loss, because at least for the 4 years that we've been here, the girls have had a lockdown tall center. It used to be Bridget O'Connor, then it was Sam Anton. For a year, it was both back in 2019. But now this team, unlike the boys, like you talked about, that their advantage is their height, that's not necessarily the advantage here for the girls. More so, it's their speed. Expect players like Marin Boucher and Carly Pachalski to try to step up in the absence of Sam Anton, but they certainly do not have the same height. But they can at least provide some sort of support in terms of defending the paint and rebounding. But the story of this team is that they can run and that they can put up 3-pointers. Chase Clavon had 45 made threes last season. Molly Maleg, 16.2 points per game. Zoe Brown, Charlotte Breen were both big shooters last year. This once again has a nice group of players who can shoot the ball very well. And I think the girls are in prime position to have another decent season. But the thing last year was that they were streaky. Yeah, they'd go on these 4-game winning streaks, and then they'd go into a 4 or 5 game stretch where they go 1-4, 1-5. They really can't afford to be streaky in such a short season with only 12 games. But I think the girls have reasons to be excited heading into this exciting winter season with Coach Glutz in her 4th season back with the girls.
Yeah, definitely. They're going to be missing some of that physicality with Anton gone. But, we've seen it. These girls can play a whole game. They have some really great stamina, which is something that's very important, especially with Molly Maleg being a track athlete as well. She's definitely going to have to step up and lead this team to victory. And like you said, consistency is going to be important, especially with a shorter season. Hopefully they can have a repeat of last year, if not better, but we'll have to see. And moving on to the Edison Metuchen joint hockey team, which has already kicked off their season, and how have they performed, and which players, specifically those from Metuchen, have led the way?
So we explain it each year, but we might as well for new listeners once again. Back in, I believe it was 2017, Edison High School, J.P. Stevens, and Metuchen High School all combined to form one team that they call the Eagle Hawk Dogs. Nonetheless, despite the name, it's a nice decision, because none of these schools had the commitment of hockey players to have their own programs, but the 3 of them coming together, especially since typically with the way the divisions are, where they try to put smaller schools with smaller schools, we never really see Metuchen teams playing against Edison or J.P. Stevens, despite their vicinity to Metuchen High School being so close and nearby. But now they get to come together as this one Edison Metuchen unit. And it's looking good. It's been looking good. Last year, they had their best record as a program at 8-18. They're slowly growing, but it has been a tough season this year. They're 0-3. They've been outscored by a combined 27-4. 2 of those goals have come from Metuchen players, seniors Paul Sarka and Jake DeVito. They have some juniors as well. Thomas Calantoni is one. Our own Itai Geller is also on the team and had an assist in one of the games. So there's some talent there, but it's been a slow start. But I wouldn't be too concerned because 2 of these first 3 games have been against Woodbridge and St. Joe's. And if you know anything about sports in the last 15, 20 years in general in the GMC, St. Joe's has arguably been the best private school, and in many cases, Woodbridge has been the best public school. So many of the games that they won last season, they went 3-1 combined against Kearney and Colonia. They don't play either of those schools this year. So that's going to be tough for this team. But they've gotten the 2 toughest games, I'd argue, out of the way, playing at Woodbridge and then playing St. Joe's. They only play St. Joe's once this season. So there's still time. They're also on a 12-game schedule. They're only a quarter of the way through that they can try to turn things around. But it has been a bit of a tough start. And after starting 4-0 last season, it's a little bit of a letdown, but I wouldn't be too concerned about this hockey team heading into the month of February.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about them either. We've seen it. They have been getting better over the years. From their first season, this is a lot better. I feel like it just has to do with better organization between these 3 schools, more experienced players filling the gaps and being able to play with each other because, they don't see each other during the day. They don't really have maybe that team chemistry that some other teams do. But I think we're seeing that progress and develop a bit more as years go on. And obviously Giddis being, getting more experience as a hockey coach. So I feel like this team does have somewhere to go. I think, like you said, we shouldn't be too worried. St. Joe's is no joke when it comes to really any sport. So I still have a lot of hope for this hockey team. I think they can pull off a very good run this year. It's going to be tough with 12 games, like you said, but I'm not really too concerned about them. They'll do just fine, and hopefully they will continue to get better as they have done in the past few years or so. And we're coming up on our questions about wrestling and the swimming team, which are very hardly impacted by COVID. And are there any updates on their schedules? Any announcements on the safety and stuff like that for these 2 sports?
So first off, with wrestling, they have been moved to the spring. The current tentative test date, current tentative start date is March 1st that they would start with practice. That's the same case with all the other spring sports like baseball, softball, boys and girls golf, boys tennis, but all of those sports are outside. Now, I don't know how wrestling is actually going to work because it's a high contact indoor sport, but you know that the NJSIAA is going to be brainstorming ways to try to make things work. If anything, it's going to be similar to what we heard from the Hollerans at the beginning of this show. It would be dual meets. There's not going to be wrestling matches where you see several schools there. It would just be one against the other to limit the amount of people in the building. Now, swimming is a weird situation because, first of all, when you think of COVID-19, swimming and chlorine has been rumored and said and proven by science in the past, all the way back in the spring, to be a killer of COVID. So you'd think that swimming in a pool would be safe, but there's a lot more than that, which is why Metuchen swimming is in a tough spot right now. I was talking to one of the swimmers, Alan Sia, a few weeks ago at an NHS thing, and he was explaining this whole situation that they have right now. So the YMCA in Metuchen, we know that the pool in there, the pool's big, but the room itself, if you've been at the Y, it's not a big room. And there's only 20 people allowed in that room at one time. And if you're going to have a typical sanctioned NJSIAA event, if you have the officials, the trainers, the timers, that already takes up 10 of the 20. Then you have a coach, that leaves 4 swimmers for each school. You cannot really have an accurate swim meet like that. So that's the first issue. If Metuchen wants to play, they need to find a home. So that's number one. Number two, in general, there have been some schools that have already pulled out and have opted against a swim season and are instead focusing more so on making basketball and hockey happen, which so far have been the 2 most promising sports for the winter. And listen, we both know the winter season was going to be difficult from the beginning. Playing indoor sports during a pandemic, this isn't a surprise. When the spring comes, even if the cases are a little high. We saw it work in the fall. We'll see stoppages and such, but there's not as much concern because it's outdoors. But the winter, it's tough with limits on indoor gatherings. So best of luck to the swim team that they can figure things out. But Coach Thomas and these swimmers, they want a season, because there's also been speculation about them having a practice-only season where they don't get any competitions. And sure, that gets them the work back in, but you don't really want that because, I mean, everybody wants to swim. Everyone wants to compete. Everyone wants to succeed, not just swim in a pool. So that's the thing here. I still think there's going to be enough schools committed, and the NJSIAA is going to stay committed once basketball and hockey are in full swing in these next couple of weeks to make sure something can happen for swimming. But that's another sport like wrestling. You're only going to have meets with two teams. It's only going to be dual meets. You can't have so many schools at once like the Pirates Invitational each year. But if they do get going, there's some seniors to watch for the boys, Alan Sia, Alex Liu. For the girls, Kira Stolarski, Bridget Thomas. All of them have excelled in their first 3 years, and you expect nothing different in year number 4. But that's going to wrap up our sports segment. For Josh Hyman, I'm Eddie Kalegi. This is the Metuchen High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS. Moving into our final segment of the day here on the MHS Podcast, I'm Eddie Kalegi. It's been a strange year for the senior class of 2021, but Project Graduation is trying to make the best of it. We're joined by two of the leaders of the organization this year, Ms. Coleman and Ms. Piovoso. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for having us.
So, first off, for those who aren't familiar, what is Project Graduation and what do you guys do?
Well, Project Graduation in a normal year is a big undertaking. Project Graduation, as you might know, is an event that started nationally back in the 80s with the intent of keeping seniors safe on graduation night. Many seniors they were finding were drinking and driving, a lot of them were dying. And so this organization leapt forward to plan an event. The event is huge. It's an overnight event. It costs over $25,000. And the team of crazy people who volunteer to take it on have 10 months to raise that much money and get everything organized. So this year, and this really, Mrs. Piovoso is the driving force of this, so I'm going to let her pick up after this. But Mrs. Piovoso said, look, like this is a crappy year all around, and this is their senior year, a year where many memories are made and many opportunities will now be lost. How can we expand this plan to include things throughout the whole year to make it a lot more interesting and maybe put some fun memories in? So, Chris, I'm going to let you pick up from there.
Yeah, I guess this past spring, I felt so sorry for the senior class of 2020, and I couldn't imagine my own son ending his year that way. And little did I know that our entire senior year was going to be affected by the pandemic. And being a teacher, I just see the kids and they're lost. And I guess what I wanted to do is provide a little bit of hope that we're not forgetting about you, and we're going to make it even better than it was if you had a normal year. And we just are having a ball with it. I mean, anything I see that I can convert into helping recognize the accomplishments of this class. And they're a big class. You guys are really involved in school and the arts and sports and clubs. And I thought, you guys can't just fall off the face of the earth in June. Like the whole town is going to know that we have a senior class graduating. So Michael's plight for me has now become the entire senior class. Like I want you guys to end your year with a smile. And that's really what we do every day is we're trying to make sure you guys are recognized and supported throughout all of this as well.
Yeah, so it's been a year-long process planning events. There's already been a couple that have gone on. So maybe to Ms. Coleman first, what are some of the events that have taken place already? If you could explain them. I know there was the cornhole and the scavenger hunt. So
yeah,
how successful were they?
You know, they were very successful, happy to say, and involved some town cooperation, some groups in town that have stepped up and helped. You know, part of the issue is we do want to abide by COVID safety protocols. And so how can we keep you safe while giving you some fun? And so the Metuchen Elks offered to help us sponsor a cornhole tournament. So as I know you were there. Mr. Piovoso, in fact, built a lot of the cornhole game, pieces for the event. People donated stuff, and the town the rec department let us use Charles Field, and we spread out, and teams competed in good old-fashioned cornhole with some pizza and a DJ. And we had about 70 kids participate in that event, which was great. The next big event that we also had homecoming game that day. Mr. Cathcart arranged for senior special seating at the stadium. So that was fun, a little bit of support for the football team too. Then the next event that we had was a scavenger hunt through town the day before winter break. And we had more like 90 kids participate in that, and teams of bubbles, kids who've been spending time together anyway, traveled around town masked. If you weren't wearing your mask, none of it counted. You didn't get any points for anything that you found. Went around town and captured, what they found on the scavenger hunt via photos, sent them all to us, and we tabulated all the scores that night. So that was so much fun, watching kids just send in pictures from all over town, doing all kinds of things, TikTok videos of singing Christmas songs. We had a blast. So after you guys all finished up that night, we were all at our computers for several hours looking at all of your folders and putting together, the album that now is on our website too. So that was a lot of fun. I think one of the biggest challenges, in addition to raising money, and we could talk about that later, but getting the word out for everything. We have an Instagram account, we have a web page within the Metuchen School District, Metuchen High School website. We send out emails, the parents post on Facebook. So anything we can do to help get the word out for kids to sign up and participate. That's been a big challenge too.
Yeah, and definitely just with this year, it's so hard to find out really any information when you're not in the school, because typically you'd see things posted on the boards and you'd hear announcements, but it's really hard to get the word out. But the fact that half the grade was there, for example, for the scavenger hunt is a good sign. Moving into some of those later events. So Mrs. Piovoso, last thing, 21 weeks left for the class of 2021. What are some of the other plans going forwards that you guys have in the works for these last few months?
Ed, we actually have a decent amount of planned. The only hope we have is that they can be executed safely, and that, we don't have to cancel them. We have 21 for 21. So every Tuesday, there was 21 Tuesdays as of this past Tuesday. We're going to give away $21 to a place in town just to recognize a senior and keep their name in the paper, so to speak. This past week, Anna East won a $21 gift card to What's the Scoop, which leads me to my next fundraiser. What's the Scoop has agreed to design a sundae for the seniors, a blue and black hot fudge sundae. We will get some money back from each sundae that's sold, so everybody can go and order. So they were our first business of choice to give out a gift card. So the seniors are supporting our town as well as the town is supporting our seniors. We have a Powder Puff game planned. We have in the works a drive-in movie night. We are booking a prom outdoors. So we are pretty confident that that will take place. We are working on a project graduation evening on the night of graduation. We have a meeting Monday night, so when we all get together, you wait, there'll be much more on the agenda after we all meet. But so far, that's what we've got going on.
Yeah, we're also hoping, there's some parents who've now expressed interest in helping us run a tubing event at a place in Mahwah. So keep your fingers crossed for that, for some snow tubing. And just for a little plug also, don't forget Chipotle. February 2nd, everybody go get your dinner there and show the code so we get some.
I forgot about Chipotle. So we just want as many kids to know that every single thing that we do, the very first thing we discuss is how we're going to do it safely. And if we can't do it safely, we're not doing it. So we are extremely cognizant of keeping everybody safe, but we also want everybody to just smile and see each other before you guys all go off to your respective colleges and your year is ended.
Yeah, certainly. And as a senior myself who participated in both the cornhole and the scavenger hunt, I can say that it was very safe and it was very fun. It was nice to hang out with my friends and do something with the school, with just how strange of a year it has been. So I commend you both and all the other parents who have been working so hard to try to make things better for us seniors, and good luck planning and hopefully being able to execute a lot of these plans throughout the rest of the school year.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for thinking of us.
So that'll wrap up.
Great job calling last night. I'm so excited to listen to you call the home basketball games. That's another thing I'm so happy that it's taken place. So good job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really nice that basketball and some of the other winter sports have been able to get started. So that'll wrap up today's show. A thank you to our guests, Ms. Coleman and Ms. Piovoso, as well as Marty and Kelli Holleran. For Itai Geller, Josh Hyman, and Julia Hirschfield, I'm Eddie Kalegi. This is the Metuchen High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS.